Firstly, the point about the, if we get rid of the people who pay 50% of our taxes, my answer is do the maths. It's something that people are not very willing to do sometimes because the answer isn't what they want. But you have to do the maths. Second thing,
isn't the point that
if I'm going to I suggest that a certain lack of will of what was being said doesn't help things. We're investing in stopping tax evasion, so I'm afraid, although I know a lot of people in this room would like to have the argument, it's not one that's going to be had. Something about tax. Tax on corporates means that small businesses can grow. It means that business can grow. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the idea of business, but businesses actually make money. And we need to make money because then we can spend money. It's really quite simple. Now, the public sector does a lot of good work, but the public sector spends money. It doesn't take an awful lot to work out that if you're spending all the money and you haven't got small businesses generating it through manufacturing, you can't spend it. I would suggest that the history of the Labour government, who thought they could just spend money and left the country bankrupt every single time they had it, might suggest that the Labour Party is a bit naive. Now, I'm guessing a lot of people in this room don't like Thatcher. Well, in a sense, you guys invented Thatcher. She wouldn't have been needed had the country not been in such a mess to begin with. Now, she wasn't very popular with the Conservatives to begin with, and it was only when we had the lights going out and the country in complete shambles that she became necessary. In terms of why we need to deal with this, what would you do with 120 million a day? There's a lot of good things you could do with it. At the moment, we're sending off to foreigners to pay for the interest on our debt. Now, in my books, that's a terrible waste of money that could be going to better things. Why do we need to reduce the debt and the structural deficit? Well, to make sure that we're spending 120 million a day in a slightly more constructive way than we're doing at the moment. I'd also suggest that not tackling this enormous and unprecedented amount of debt and structural deficit, and there's a difference, is probably the biggest and most dangerous experiment we could be doing. So if we're talking about experiments, goodness me, ignoring it is an incredibly risky one, and I don't think any sensible person would want to risk taking that. Welfare state. We need to make sure that the welfare state is actually catering for those who do need it. Is it right that people who can work don't? Is that right? Does anyone here think that if someone can work, they shouldn't work and that it should pay not to work? Really? Do you really think that? And do you think that it's right that other people's money, who they're working very hard to earn, goes to people who could work but don't? And do you think it's right that that money that could go to someone who really does need it is going to someone who doesn't? Hands up if you think that's right. Finally, I've got the lady asked me a very good question about a big society. The thing about a big society is it's a new phrase, so often people expect a brand new concept, and it's not. It's what's made Britain great. And I'd like to clear up a couple of things, and I'm sorry if I was unclear on the radio. Firstly, it's a completely different thing from the cuts. The very fact that people think that getting on and doing good stuff and being a good community is to do with government funding is an indication of just how much the nation's become sort of an oversized infant clinging to the teat of the wet nurse state. I mean, that is a very, very dangerous situation to get into. What it is to do with doing is enabling people who do want to get more involved, and there are a lot of people who are volunteering to the maximum capacity. They need to have things made easier for them.
But you said that the leaders of the councils were earning extortionate and vast amounts of money with the workers beneath them earning terrible low amounts of money for what they're doing. Well, why should we be paying on our council tax money to these leaders of the councils, but still running our amenities and services?
Absolutely, I'd agree. I completely agree with you. And what we're doing about that is it's completely wrong. Because also people don't know how much leaders of councils are earning. They don't know what they do, and they don't know who they are. I know you do. A lot of people don't. So what we're doing is we're going to publish all the figures so you can see how much people are earning.
That's not going to help us in the communities. If you're saying to us we need to run our services and communities, well, we're already losing money. I'm an NHS worker. I'm not getting rising salaries. I'm not getting the expenses, and there's threats of cutting our expenses. So how am I in a community?
All right, sorry, you have to
it's not
because we're summing up.
I don't think anyone wants to be making the kind of cuts we're seeing, and it is, and I'm very sorry for that. And as my speech was, we're having to deal with the situation, otherwise it will get a lot worse. And that's one choice we face. The big society is about helping people who do want to do things, do it. CRB checks, absolute madness. Helping people volunteer. There are parents who do want to set up a school and they've been stopped, so we enabled it. We're not saying to people who are already stretched, do more. Second thing is, it's a bigger thing. At one point, you remember the quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I hear everyone groan, there's not an awful lot of asking what you can do for your country in this room, if I may be so bold, but that was
Right, the audience need to calm down, okay? Remember we're having a debate here.
Well, we've moved away from an idea of responsibility, and our responsibility is going towards rights. And big society is about returning an idea of responsibility. It's separate from cuts. It's a terrible shame that that kind of change has had to...
It's not separate cuts.
Right, okay, sorry, sir, I understand that you feel quite emotional about this, okay? But remember, this is a debate, so we need to do it in a debate form, okay? So we're now summing up, okay? But we don't.
Another word for it
But we
is
don't,
power to the
okay?
people. And although I don't agree with a lot of what everyone's saying here today, I think you're absolutely right to raise it. I think it's absolutely right you've had a sensible debate. We're going to disagree on stuff. But the big society is about power to the people. I don't agree with what a lot of the Anti-Cuts Alliance says and does, but I think it's a very good thing that people come together and actually make their voice heard. Sometimes it's difficult for people to do that. I think sometimes it's become difficult for people to express what they think without thinking they're going to be seen as politically incorrect or they're going to be stamped upon. Big society is about power to the people. And it may be a rather difficult meeting for me here this evening, but it's an example of it.